Peak performance researcher and executive coach Zahrai sits at her computer and fires off the exact same email to 48 different psychologists, professors, and executive coaches. And the email asks one simple, slightly unsettling question. She asks, if you wanted to completely sabotage someone's success and happiness, what is the most effective way to do it?
Which is a pretty wild question to just drop on people. I mean, you might expect a pretty wide variety of ruthless tactics from a group like that, like destroy their reputation, ruin their finances,
Right.
or surround them with toxic leadership.
Yeah, exactly. But the answers that flooded her inbox by morning, they were almost entirely unanimous. The overwhelming consensus was plant seeds of self-doubt.
Wow.
Yeah. You don't need to destroy their world from the outside. You just make them doubt their own capabilities, and, well, their own mind will do the heavy lifting of destroying their potential for you. Okay, let's unpack this.
I love this because it forces this really profound realization about how we view human potential. The greatest barrier standing between you and the life you want to build isn't some, insurmountable external circumstance. It is literally an internal biological mechanism.
Which is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are taking Zahrai's comprehensive research from her book, Big Trust, to uncover the architecture of that internal barrier. We're going to break down why smart, highly capable people, meaning, you listening to this, constantly doubt themselves.
Right.
And then we're going to build a science-backed toolkit to rewire those neurological habits and develop what Zahrai calls unshakable big trust.
And to start that rewiring process, we have to fundamentally alter our relationship with self-doubt, because the natural instinct for most high achievers is to view doubt as a deep personal failing.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
We just assume it's a symptom of weakness. We think, if I was just tougher or more competent, I wouldn't feel this way.
Exactly. But biologically speaking, that narrative is entirely false. Self-doubt is actually a highly evolved survival mechanism. It's just a mechanism that has gone completely rogue in the modern world.
A survival mechanism gone wrong. Okay, let's dig into the mechanics of that. What is literally happening inside the brain when we start spiraling into self-doubt?
So Zahrai uses this really brilliant framework here. She compares the brain to a corporate boardroom. Imagine you have 4 key executives sitting around a table in your mind. You have the CEO, who is responsible for big picture decisions and long-term vision.
Makes sense.
Then you have the strategist, right? The one who maps out the logic and the step-by-step plans. You have the automations lead, which is your habit loop, just running your daily routines in the background. And finally, sitting quietly in the corner, you have the risk analyst. His only job is to constantly scan the horizon for danger.
And on a normal day, a risk analyst is a crucial hire, right? He's the one keeping you from stepping into oncoming traffic or investing your entire life savings in a questionable crypto scam.
Absolutely. When that boardroom is functioning in harmony, you experience a state of flow. The CEO is calling the shots, the strategist is executing, and you feel confident, productive, and clear-headed.
Okay, so where does it go wrong?
Well, when self-doubt is triggered, say, by a looming deadline, a critical email from a boss, or stepping onto a stage, that risk analyst leaps out of his chair and stages a total boardroom coup.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he perceives a threat to your social or professional survival, and he just goes into absolute overdrive.
He's banging on the boardroom table, pulling the fire alarms, locking the door.
Literally, and the result is total physiological and cognitive chaos. The CEO gets completely overwhelmed and loses focus. The strategist starts spinning in circles trying to account for like a million improbable disaster scenarios. The entire boardroom melts down.
Right.
And this is crucial to understand. When you are drowning in self-doubt, you don't just feel bad emotionally. Your cognitive function is legitimately impaired.
Wait, really? Impaired how?
You actually cannot think clearly or act decisively because the risk analyst has hijacked the neurological controls. You're effectively locked out of your own higher level thinking.
That is wild. Zahrai actually compares this specific feeling to getting a burr stuck to your pants on a hike.
Oh yeah, the burr analogy.
Yeah, those little spiky seed pods that are incredibly irritating.
Yeah.
And the harder you aggressively try to rip them out of the fabric, the deeper those microscopic hooks dig into the threads.
Exactly.
If you try to fight the risk analyst head on and force him to shut up, he just assumes you don't realize how much danger you are in, so he yells even louder.
It's the perfect visual representation. But the boardroom meltdown isn't the only biological glitch working against us here. We also have to contend with a phenomenon called confabulation.
Confabulation.
Mm.
Okay, this is where the brain essentially turns into a fiction writer, right?
Yes. And it all comes back to evolutionary biology again. Our brains absolutely despise uncertainty. For our ancient ancestors, uncertainty usually equated to death.
Right, like if you heard a rustling in the tall grass and you didn't know what it was.
Exactly. The humans who survived were the ones who assumed it was a tiger, not just the wind. Today, when we face an ambiguous situation or a lack of clear information, the brain refuses to just sit comfortably with the unknown. It insists on filling in the blanks.
Oh, I see where this is going.
And to keep you, quote unquote, safe, the strategist and the risk analyst work together to fill those blanks with the absolute worst case scenario.
So when you were sitting at your desk and your colleague hasn't replied to your email for 6 hours, your brain doesn't just assume they're having a busy day and back-to-back meetings.
Nope.
Your brain definitively decides they are furious with you.
Or, if you stumble over a sentence during a team presentation, you didn't just misspeak. Everyone in the room now knows you are completely unqualified for your role.
Right.
The brain makes up a fictional story to resolve the discomfort of uncertainty, and then it presents that story to the CEO as an absolute, undeniable fact.
It's like your brain has a faulty autocorrect, but instead of just changing your spelling, it is constantly autofilling your life with the worst possible assumptions about your relationships and your career.
Faulty autocorrect is a great way to put it. And this is compounded by another biological feature Zahrai calls the gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper, what does that one do?
So the gatekeeper is your brain's selective filtering system. It subconsciously edits the reality you perceive to match whatever underlying beliefs you already hold about yourself.
So if I have a negative belief,
Right. If you harbor a deep-seated belief that you aren't good enough, the gatekeeper goes to work scanning the room, highlighting every tiny piece of proof to validate that negative belief.
wow.
It will completely blind you to the 5 people nodding along to your presentation and hyperfixate your attention on the one person in the back row checking their phone.
So we are dealing with a panicked risk analyst, a faulty autocorrect that writes tragedy, and a highly biased gatekeeper all working in tandem to sabotage us. I mean, it sounds incredibly bleak.
It really does.
But knowing this machinery exists is the first step to dismantling it, I think. Because once we understand why the brain generates this doubt, we can start to map out exactly how it targets us.
Exactly.
Which brings us to Zahrai's research on over 4,000 people, where she maps out what she calls the doubt profile.
Right. Her data revealed that self-doubt isn't just one big amorphous cloud of general misery. It is actually highly specific. It attacks us through 4 distinct lenses, which she categorizes as the 4 attributes.
Okay, let's break those down.
Understanding which specific attribute you are weakest in is the key to getting your boardroom back in order. So the first attribute is acceptance. The core question here is, am I enough?
So this is fundamentally about self-worth. Believing you have intrinsic value just as a person, completely separate from your achievements.
Yes. And the data here is staggering. 54% of people operate in the danger zone for acceptance.
54%.
Over half. Over half. When your acceptance is weak, your identity is deeply fragile. You constantly chase impossible standards through perfectionism, or, you fall into chronic people-pleasing because you are trying to earn your worth through external validation.
Right, you're constantly performing for other people.
And you shrink away from taking risks because failure wouldn't just be a temporary setback. It would feel like a permanent verdict on who you are as a human being.
Oof. To fix this, Zahrai suggests expanding your identity beyond your output. And she shares this deeply personal story in the book about being highly successful in the corporate world, but feeling crippled by self-doubt.
Yeah, it's a great story.
To truly transform her boardroom confidence, she actually took up competitive Latin dancing.
Yeah.
Now, I have to admit, I'm struggling to see the bridge there. How does doing the salsa on a weekend translate to not feeling like a fraud in a Tuesday morning marketing meeting?
I mean, it seems disconnected on the surface, but it fundamentally shifts your identity pillars. Think about the boardroom. If your sole identity in life is, say, successful marketing executive, any critique or failure in that realm is a threat to your entire existence.
Okay.
Your risk analyst hits the ultimate panic button because your psychological survival is on the line. But by taking up Latin dancing, Zahrai built a completely separate pillar of identity.
She proved to herself that she had value and passion completely disconnected from her corporate output.
Exactly. When you have multiple pillars supporting your sense of self, a bad day at work is just a crack in one pillar. It doesn't bring the whole structure crashing down.
That structural analogy makes perfect sense. Once you uncouple your identity from your output, you hit the next roadblock, which is actually doing the work. Which brings us to attribute number 2, agency.
Right.
The core question here is, can I handle this?
So agency is about trusting your own capacity to figure things out in real time. When your agency is weak, you suffer heavily from imposter syndrome. You procrastinate endlessly, or you trap yourself in the preparation phase.
Oh, the preparation phase, just endless research.
Endless. You wait until you feel completely 100% ready before you start anything, which guarantees you never start.
And this leads to what I consider the golden rule of this entire deep dive. It completely flips our cultural understanding of confidence upside down.
It really does.
We are constantly taught that we need to build confidence so we can do the hard thing. But the rule here is confidence is not a prerequisite for action. Confidence is the result of action.
Neurologically speaking, confidence is simply the reward your brain gives you after you survive the hard thing.
Wow.
You cannot think your way into feeling confident. You literally have to act your way into it.
This actually reminds me of the famous story about George Dantzig, which Zahrai highlights perfectly. Dantzig was a PhD student in mathematics, and one day, he arrives 20 minutes late to his statistics class.
Love this story.
He sees 2 complex math problems written on the chalkboard, assumes they are the standard homework assignment, scribbles them down, and goes home.
And the fascinating part of his story is the mechanism of what happened next. He agonized over these problems for days. They were incredibly difficult, but he kept chipping away at them, eventually solved both, and handed them in to his professor.
And the professor's reaction?
The professor was utterly stunned because those equations weren't a homework assignment. They were 2 of the most famous unsolved theorems in the history of statistics. Top mathematical minds had been trying to crack them for years.
That is amazing. He solved the impossible simply because he was late to class and no one told him it was impossible.
His agency was completely uninhibited. Because he lacked the context, his risk analyst never perceived a threat. The limiting beliefs we hold, our learned self-doubt, are the actual ceiling on our potential, not our raw intellectual abilities.
Right.
If Dantzig had known those problems were unsolved, his inner boardroom would have melted down before he even picked up a pencil.
It really emphasizes how much of our limitation is self-imposed. Let's move to attribute number 3, which is autonomy. And the question here is, do my choices matter?
Autonomy is fundamentally about ownership. Do you believe your decisions actively shape your future, or do you view life as something that just happens to you? When autonomy is weak, you surrender your locus of control, you get trapped in complaining, resenting the success of your peers, and, dwelling on the past.
And the framework Zahrai offers to build. Autonomy is this concept called choose your hard.
Yes.
The idea is that marriage is hard, but divorce is hard. Staying in a terrible, stagnant job is hard, but reinventing your career is hard. Choose your hard. Now, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
At first glance, telling someone to choose your hard sounds incredibly pessimistic. It almost sounds like a guarantee that no matter what path you take, you're just doomed to suffer. How does that actually empower someone to build big trust?
I get that. It is a jarring phrase. But the empowerment comes from reclaiming your locus of control. When we lack autonomy, we feel like passive victims of circumstance.
We're just waiting to be rescued.
Exactly. We spend our energy constantly searching for this mythical, easy path that just doesn't exist, and we feel cheated when we inevitably encounter friction. By accepting that everything worthwhile involves difficulty, you stop being paralyzed by the fear of the struggle.
Oh, I see.
You are no longer a victim being subjected to a hard thing. You are the architect who consciously selected that specific challenge.
Ah, it shifts your internal monologue from saying, why is this happening to me, to saying, I chose this mountain because I want the view from the top.
Exactly. And by reclaiming that ownership, you can actively expand what Zahrai calls your luck surface area.
Luck surface area.
Yeah, you can't control every variable in life, but by taking ownership and continuously putting your work out there, trying new things, raising your hand for opportunities, you drastically increase the mathematical probability of a lucky break colliding with you.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to the 4th and final attribute, adaptability. And the question is, can I manage my emotions?
Adaptability is your emotional anchor in a storm. When the environment gets chaotic, do you stay grounded, or do your emotions completely hijack the boardroom?
There is some really fascinating Harvard research detailed in the sources regarding adaptability, specifically looking at how we process anxiety.
Yes, the Harvard findings are incredible because they prove that physiologically speaking, anxiety and excitement are exactly the same state of arousal.
Wait, exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Your heart rate elevates, your palm sweat, cortisol spikes, your focus narrows. The body is doing the exact same thing in both scenarios.
Yeah, it is wild.
The only difference between feeling paralyzed by terror and feeling thrilled by anticipation is the narrative your brain's strategist is assigning to those physical sensations.
Okay, so when the strategist feels that spike in cortisol, how do we stop it from handing the microphone over to the risk analyst?
You have to consciously intervene and reframe the narrative out loud, instead of pacing the room trying to calm down, which, by the way, rarely works because your body is flooded with adrenaline.
Right, you're just fighting the adrenaline.
Exactly. You literally tell yourself, I am excited for this. You redirect the physiological energy into a positive channel. You aren't suppressing the emotion, you're utilizing it as fuel.
That's a great reframe.
Zahrai also suggests a practice she calls stepping onto the balcony,
Removing yourself from the immediate emotional flood.
taking a meta view of your situation. Often, what we mislabel as a deep systemic crisis of confidence is actually just the weight of the four hidden loads:
What do you are?
cognitive load, emotional load, physical load, and stimulation load. When you step onto the balcony, you might realize, hey, I'm not an imposter who is failing at my career. I am just deeply exhausted, dehydrated, and overstimulated by my phone. So simple, but so true. So we've mapped out the four attributes: acceptance, agency, autonomy, and adaptability, which define the battlefield. But we need to talk about the actual enemies on the field, the specific voices whispering these doubts in our ears.
Right.
Zahrai gives these voices a highly appropriate name: the inner deceivers or the jerk squad.
The Jerk Squad, I love that name.
Yeah.
Once you understand your doubt profile, you begin to recognize the distinct members of this Jerk Squad. They are the ones constantly feeding bad data to your risk analyst.
Okay, who are they?
There are four main culprits. First is the classic judge. This is the voice obsessed with historical data. It constantly replays your past mistakes on a loop, telling you that every past failure is permanent proof of your present inadequacy.
It's like, remember when you completely froze during that client pitch 3 years ago? Yeah, everyone still thinks you're an idiot. That guy.
That exact guy. Then you have the misguided protector. This voice is the master of confabulation. It catastrophizes every future scenario just to keep you inside your comfort zone.
It says, don't even apply for that promotion. You definitely won't get it. The rejection will destroy you. Let's just stay here where it's safe.
You know, this one reminds me of a wildly overbearing helicopter parent living inside your brain. Like, they genuinely mean well, and their ultimate goal is to keep you safe from getting your feelings hurt. But the result is that they completely suffocate your growth.
The intent is protection, but the outcome is paralysis.
Right.
Third on the squad is the ringmaster. This voice ties your entire sense of worth to endless, grinding productivity. It bullies your boardroom by saying, you only matter if you are achieving. Push harder, work later, skip your vacation.
Which is obviously the primary voice driving severe burnout among high achievers.
Absolutely. And the final member of the squad,
Yeah, who's the fourth?
the neglector. This is the ultimate approval seeker. It's the voice that forces you to say yes to projects when you desperately need to say no, purely to avoid the discomfort of disappointing someone else.
All right, so we have this jerk squad wreaking havoc in the boardroom. How do we evict them?
Well, the crucial psychological shift is realizing you actually can't evict them. As we established earlier, these voices aren't inherently evil. They are evolutionary survival mechanisms that are just terrible at their current jobs.
Okay, so we can't kick them out.
Right. The tools Zahrai provides to manage them is surprisingly practical. When one of these voices starts spiraling, you visualize grabbing an imaginary baseball bat. You literally whack the thought away in your mind's eye, and you consciously say, thanks, but no thanks.
Honestly, it sounds a little silly at first, but it is actually a really profound mindfulness technique. It creates instant psychological distance.
Exactly. It separates your identity from the intrusive thought.
Yeah.
You realize you are not your self-doubt. You are the CEO observing the self-doubt.
And in that tiny gap of observation, you reclaim your power to choose how the boardroom responds rather than letting the risk analyst default to panic. Okay, so we've diagnosed the biological glitches, we've mapped the four attributes, we've met the jerk squad. Let's pull all of this together. Zahrai outlines a specific 7-step path in the source material to actually build big trust. Walk us through how we execute this in our daily lives.
Sure. The seven-step path is designed to be highly sequential so you don't overwhelm your system. Step one is simply acknowledging the battlefield. Admit that self-doubt is a biological process, not a personal flaw.
Right, it's biology, not weakness.
Step two is identifying your weakest link among the four attributes. Where is the jerk squad hitting you hardest? Is it acceptance, agency, autonomy, or adaptability?
Basically, find the biggest leak in the boat before you try to remodel the whole cabin.
Exactly. Step three is visualization. Picture the version of you operating without that specific doubt. How do they carry themselves? How do they speak up in meetings?
Paint the picture.
Step four is isolating the variable. Focus on repairing just that one attribute so your brain's strategist doesn't get overwhelmed. And step five is deploying an intervention. Pick one practice, like the thanks but no thanks bat, or expanding your identity, and do it consistently for 2 uninterrupted weeks to build new neural pathways.
Just 2 weeks of focus and the final 2 steps.
Step six is stepping onto the balcony. Whenever the doubt spikes during those 2 weeks, pause and assess your hidden loads. Are you truly unqualified or are you just exhausted?
Right.
And finally, step seven, fortify your alliance. Find your people. Self-trust grows exponentially faster in good company. You need a network of people who believe in your capacity on the days when your internal boardroom is in complete disarray.
Looking at this entire framework, a really important question comes to mind. Is our ultimate goal to eventually fire the brain's risk analyst entirely? Or do we just demote him to a windowless office in the basement?
You absolutely cannot fire him. You need him to survive in the world. If you fire the risk analyst, you just become reckless and impulsive.
Right, you'd be a disaster.
But you don't demote him either. What you do is strip him of his veto power. You allow him to present his concerns to the boardroom, but you give the CEO and the strategist back the ultimate authority to make the final decision.
You cannot defeat self-doubt by silencing it. You disarm it by changing your relationship with it.
Exactly. Big trust isn't built in one grand, sweeping moment of total fearlessness. It is built in tiny, everyday decisions to stop shrinking, even when the risk analyst is shouting.
What an incredible synthesis. To pull all of this together for you listening, the doubt you feel is a misguided biological friend trying to keep you safe from tigers that no longer exist.
Well said.
By understanding whether your doubt attacks your acceptance, agency, autonomy, or adaptability, you can anticipate the jerk squad's tactics. And remember that golden rule, confidence is the reward for taking action, not the starting line.
The secret is taking that first step with the doubt still sitting in your pocket.
So, as you look at your own internal boardroom today, which of the 4 attributes are you going to focus on rewiring first? Do you need to build acceptance by expanding your identity? Do you need to build agency by taking action before you feel completely ready?
Both great places to start.
Is it time to claim your autonomy and choose your hard? Or do you need to practice adaptability and reframe your anxiety into excitement? The tools to take back control are all right there.
They really are.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. We talked earlier about your brain's gatekeeper, that powerful subconscious filter that constantly scans reality to find proof, validating your negative beliefs. It's an incredibly efficient mechanism.
Very efficient.
But think about this. What would happen if you actively forced yourself to adopt a wildly positive, almost unreasonable belief about your own capabilities? What kind of proof might that exact same highly efficient gatekeepers suddenly start finding everywhere around you?
Now that is a boardroom meeting I would love to sit in on.
A completely different kind of seed being planted. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us today. We'll see you next time.